Okay, good afternoon everybody. Welcome to this Norwich Area Museums Committee meeting on Tuesday the 7th of December. Have we had any apologies?
Chair, I believe I've had apologies from Councillors Everett, Birmingham, Riley and Rumsby. I believe they've got another council meeting. Councillor Watkins and Councillor Kybird, who is an ex officio member, and Councillor King, who is a non-voting member.
Okay, thank you very much. So, have we had any public questions or petitions? Yes, Councillor Wilczek-Golden.
Yeah, can we just look into it? I don't think Councillor Rumsby should be on this committee because I think I took her place. So that might be why she's not coming.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You've got 6 members, which is you should have 6 members on this committee.
All right, I'll check that. Shall I come back to you?
There are 6 members. Each council has 6 members, and you're one of those. And there were 5 others, which are Councillors Birmingham, Riley, Rumsby, Ward, and Watkins.
Okay, thank you. So we move to public questions and petitions. Have we had any questions or petitions?
No, Chair.
Thank you. Next, we move to item 3. Any declarations of interest? Any member has? No, I'm not seeing any. In which case, let's move to the minutes for the last meeting, which was held on the 7th of September. Can I confirm everybody's happy with the minutes that they read? Yes, that's assent from everybody. Thank you. We now move to item 5, which is a Norwich Museums report covering the period of September to November 2021. I'll hand over to Robin to start that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everybody. This report, as the Chair mentioned, covers the period September to November, and as normal, I'll sort of pick out a few sort of highlights and also introduce at various points colleagues to speak to different sections of the report. But just to start with section 1, to give members a very quick update of where we are in terms of COVID procedures. The report was obviously submitted prior to the recent changes to legal frameworks, which did have an impact on museums. Prior to the most recent announcements, as detailed in section 1.1, all of the previous legal restrictions had actually been lifted on the 19th of July, although, as we've discussed in previous meetings, within museums across Norfolk Museum Service, we of course retained a number of procedures and controls to keep both visitors and staff safe. These included the requirement for people to observe respectful distancing wherever possible, and in terms of face coverings up until the 30th of November, we were expecting and recommending people wear face coverings in line with government guidance. We also were maintaining test and trace arrangements where people could check into venues, although I think it's fair to say that the vast majority of visitors now do not do that, either digitally or on paper. We've also been continuing to encourage visitors to pre-book their visits wherever possible. And again, we've seen a significant reduction in the number of visitors pre-booking and a significant increase in the numbers of visitors walking in. And that's okay. We have systems to manage that. And of course, we monitor overall capacity limits very closely. We're still operating below normal operating capacity, but certainly are able to accommodate a lot more visitors than we did previously in the sort of heightened restrictions when we were looking at only 30% of normal capacity. So we're in a much improved position from that. But obviously what we're looking to do is provide our visitors with a safe visit and obviously ensure our staff are protected. On the 30th of November, we implemented a response to the legal changes which actually did affect museum retail spaces, but the County Council also made the decision to apply restrictions to all of its premises, whereby face coverings are required of visitors. So from the 30th of November, we've updated our signage and updated our procedures whereby visitors are now required to wear face coverings. It remains compulsory for staff unless they're behind a screen or at their desks. So essentially, in line with many other organisations, we are continuing to operate prudently in regard to COVID safeguards. We have, however, as you'll see in section 1, recommenced some face-to-face activities in terms of our schools offer, and Dr. Helen Lunnan is with us this afternoon and will speak to the schools activity a little bit later, but we have recommenced school visits across the service, and I'm pleased to report that across Norfolk Museum Service we have seen a really strong response from schools throughout the autumn term with really high levels of bookings. And it's a testimony to the learning teams that is the case, and a real credit to schools who frankly have enough to deal with just to open the doors, one feels, but they are very keen to make those visits and obviously are doing that in the knowledge that we will provide not only a quality learning experience but also a safe experience as well. The only other thing to update members on in terms of general COVID arrangements across the service is item 1.10. So in common with a number of organisations, we are beginning to bring more people back to the workplace, obviously doing that prudently, and that remains under constant review. But from the 4th of October onwards, Norfolk County Council has been seeing more staff returning to back office settings. Clearly our frontline teams have been working on site pretty much throughout the pandemic, but we have now facilitated more staff coming back into the workplace where it's necessary, and we're balancing that with new approaches to smarter working across the organisation to ensure that people are still able to balance that sort of working at home, coming into the workplace when they need to, and reducing pressure on our premises, public transport, etc. And that's something, again, that we're keeping under close review, but so far those arrangements has worked well, and it means that staff, including back office staff such as curators, are able to access the collections they need on the occasions they need to do so. So a bit of a mixed economy at the moment, but obviously we are monitoring the situation closely, and I think we're all concerned about Omicron and what that means for our operations, and we're continuing to work really closely with the County Council's Health and Safety and Wellbeing team, and also consult with sector colleagues across the museums and heritage sector. So I'll pause there, Chair. I don't know if any members had any questions about general COVID procedures or practice.
Thank you for that, Robin. Are there any questions anybody would like to ask about any of that? No.
In which case, Chair, I'll pass over to Stuart Garner, the Norwich Museum's Operations Manager, to introduce Section 2.
Thank you, Robin. There hasn't been too many changes since last time we met with regards to reopening at Norwich Castle, insofar as Robin made reference to the big change being that face coverings are now mandatory across all Norwich Museum sites, as they are all Norfolk County Council buildings. But that aside, we're still continuing to use E8 as the entrance and exit point for Norwich Castle whilst we undertake the building works, and that will continue to be the case for the foreseeable future. We still have a pop-up cafe and a retail offer within Norwich Castle, which is doing very, very well within the Rotunda, and is making the museum feel much more like a lived-in space, and is continuing to do well. Across the other Norwich Museum sites, we've also, from the 10th of November, been able to go back to normal pre-COVID operating hours and days, And so I've just put within the report there, just for reference, a reminder of what those days and times are. But for Museum of Norwich at the Bridewell, that's Tuesday to Saturday, 10 a.m. to 4:30 p.m, which members may remember we'd originally had to take back from just Thursday to Saturday, and Strangers Hall, which is now back to opening on both a Wednesday and a Sunday, but with Sunday being 1 p.m. until 4:30 p.m. So that's a really positive step forwards for Norwich museums to be able to get back to our original operating hours across all Norwich museum sites. Section 2.3 with the Norwich Castle ceremony arrangements. Ceremony numbers continue to be very strong. You can see here on the table that we've got the months from May through to September, with a total up to the end of September of 341 ceremonies, with a footfall of 6,107 people. So that is the visitors, that is the guests and the couples themselves that attend wedding ceremonies, and they play, as you can see there, a significant part in the overall visitor numbers for Norwich Castle. So, and September, you will see that 127 ceremonies, there's a big uplift there. That coincides both within the confidence increase within people getting married, which the registrars have seen a big increase towards the end of the summer there, but also the fact that we were able to increase the number of people that could actually be within the museum ceremony room at any one time, which also is a big appealing factor to people that otherwise have been waiting to get married. So, so that's really positive numbers coming through for weddings.
Thanks, Chair. What I'd now like to do is introduce Dr. Helen Lunnan, who's the Learning Manager for the Norwich Museums, to introduce the Norwich Learning Team section of the report, commencing on page 15.
Thank you, Robin. Apologies that I'm speaking to some people's backs, which I realise is a little rude, but apologies for that. Hopefully you can hear me okay anyway. As Robin's already alluded to, we've been delighted to see a great appetite from schools to come back to our museums. We have shared as openly as we can what our COVID secure measures are with our schools to give them confidence in coming back to site and to make sure that they know what we are asking of them while they're on our sites, and they've been incredible in their engagement with us. So our schools are back now from 10 till 2:30, basically on a daily basis. We've been fully booked through till Christmas, and the first half of the spring term is also near capacity. That capacity is still reduced, partly because of COVID restrictions and partly because of the impact of the Keep Redevelopment project, of course. So we're hosting up to 60 students at both the Castle and at Strangers Hall, and a slightly lower number because of the smaller gallery spaces at the Museum of Norwich on a daily basis. That works incredibly well for our primary schools. One of the pieces of work that we need to do is to make sure that we're still able to welcome our secondary schools, who for all sorts of reasons need to bring out larger groups because of coaches and timetabling at school, etc., etc. So my colleague Jenny Williams is working extremely hard to make sure that we're communicating with our secondary groups and to be looking to put on bespoke activities as and when we can to make sure that we're working with those audiences as much as possible still. So the report mentions some of the events that we've been doing. It's been a very Egyptian term, and next term it will become a very Roman term. The school curriculum takes history essentially in a chronological order, so we tend to see a lot of movement from term to term in terms of the events that we do. As I mentioned in the report, we'll have hosted approximately 6,000 school children and their teachers during the whole autumn term, which when we think back to our previous year, that's an amazing achievement, and not without its challenges because of the ongoing COVID restrictions. But school children and their teachers have been extremely resilient, extremely focused and dedicated to working with us and enjoying the museum's collections, which has been really satisfying. We, of course, have our digital and virtual programmes, which we developed during COVID, and with the heightened fluctuation in schools being able to come out to us, either because they're at increased risk for some of their learners or because of COVID cases in the classroom, etc., we have seen a slight increase in our digital and virtual programs being taken up. So one of our ways in which we learnt during COVID is to have that very much a blended offer, and whilst we make those virtual programs available to schools who book for on-site visits, obviously it gives us resilience and a way of working with our schools when they can't come to the museums still. And we have seen some cancellations over the last few weeks because, as I say, the high number of COVID cases in individual classes, etc. So we've been able to convert those on-site visits in many cases into virtual engagement. For the learning team, we also, of course, do a lot of work with our visitors during the holiday periods, and the October half-term that we recently experienced was the first time that we've been able to work directly with our audiences actually in the museum, in the gallery spaces, making sure, again, we were working in COVID-secure ways to do light touch facilitation in a way that we can form conversations, we can encourage family participation, intergenerational conversations, etc., through self-guided trails, but having staff present so they can pick up those conversations and encourage engagement when people are on site. And I think we've had very good feedback and evaluation from that additional support of our visitors during that time. So we're moving forward in the same way for our Christmas programme. So again, elements of self-led activity for the visitors, performances in the DCA where we can in the Town Close Auditorium, where we can host a good number of audience members, still respectfully distanced, and keep our performers safe as well. So that will be a blended offer again for our Christmas programme. We've also managed to deliver some in-person early year sessions again in the Town Close Auditorium. These are reported on again in my report, but just to make the point that we have maintained very much stricter COVID security around this group for a whole host of reasons, but we've been delighted that we've actually been thanked for keeping those safeguards in place by childminders, by parents of children who are at increased risk, and some parents too. So we feel very much justified, and it's been very, again, fulfilling to know that those decisions that we've taken for that particular audience group have been appropriate. We have our Kick the Dust representatives here today, so I won't dwell on Kick the Dust too much. I'm delighted that Rachel's here to speak about the Norwich project specifically, and I did just include some of the elements in the report there. What I will do is just focus a little for just a minute or two on some of the activity plan engagements and activities that we've run in recent months. Increasingly, the Norwich Castle Royal Palace Reborn activity programme, which is a 4-year programme to engage audiences from early years children to older adults and everybody in between, is becoming entwined with our partner project Kick the Dust, which is also National Lottery Heritage funded, but also supporting our core programmes. So it doesn't sit outside of what we do, it's very much integrated in what we do and delivering some very rich engagement activity, very much built on the 900-year history of Norwich Castle. I included in the report the projections, which I'm hoping some of you will have seen when it's been a not too chilly evening on the side of the castle as part of the Norwich City Lights. And this is a piece of work which has been inspired by early 12th century manuscript art to tell a narrative in an illuminated style of that period, recording Henry I and Queen Adeliza's visit to Norwich Castle 900 years ago to celebrate Christmas. So it's a very much a historically informed but also very engaging and very beautiful piece of work. So if you haven't crept out into the city after dark, I encourage you to do so. That 900-year celebration is being picked up across the city, and if you start spotting crowns all over the city, this is us working in partnership with Norwich Bid and Visit Norwich. They've put on a crowns trail across the city. I think there's over 100 different participating organisations using their windows, using their displays to pick up on not just the castle's celebration of 900 years, but of course what that meant to the wider city. It's a story and a moment of celebration for the whole city, and we've been delighted with the support that we've had from Norwich Bid and through Visit Norwich to pick up on that and to take it out from the castle across the city. They're the main highlights. There's a few other points in the report which hopefully you'll have time to look at, but if anybody's got any questions, of course, I'm more than happy to take them.
Are there any questions anybody might have at this stage? No, I'm not seeing any. Just to say thank you very much for observing the safety measures. I think it's a very important thing that people are able to participate in confidence in this way.
Thank
you. Robin, shall I hand back to you at
Thanks,
this stage?
Chair, yes. So section 4 will also skip over the written report because that deals with an update on the Kick the Dust project more broadly, and we're joined this afternoon by Christine Marsden, the project coordinator, and colleagues who are going to be presenting at the end of the formal meeting, and Christine will be sort of providing a bit more context for some of the data that's provided in the report, but as with previous reports, we provided in section 4 the current summary of data and performance for the Kick the Dust project. Moving on to section 5, Chair, obviously mindful that a number of members were able to join us for the visit around the construction site, just to basically remind the committee that obviously construction work is well underway. The rest of the museum remains open to visitors and schools, and I'm joined by my colleague Hannah Jackson, who's the project manager for the Norwich Castle Royal Palace Reborn project, who's going to provide members with a visual update of progress, which hopefully for many of you will put the recent site tour into a bit more context. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. Yes, obviously exciting changes are taking place at Norwich Castle as part of the Royal Palace Reborn project, and so following the earlier tour, today seemed a good opportunity to introduce any new members to the plans that we have, and also to provide those unable to join us earlier with a visual update of the work underway. So hopefully, as you're all aware, Norwich Castle Royal Palace Reborn is a huge redevelopment with lots of exciting changes planned and activities taking place. So as a result, we've distilled the project into 5 key messages, which hopefully help to describe what we're looking to achieve. And apologies to those who've already heard these at least once from me today. Royalty revealed. We're reinstating the original Norman floor level to recreate the palace of the Norman kings just as it would have been 900 years ago. Medieval treasure. We're working in partnership with the British Museum to create a fascinating new gallery of the medieval period. The People's Palace. We want to ensure that the Castle Keep and the museum as a whole is accessible and welcoming for all of our visitors through physical changes and through careful interpretation decisions. Keep learning. Although the pandemic may have changed some of the delivery methods for elements of our engagement project, as you've just heard from Helen, we're still on track to reach out to our target audiences over more than 5 years of events and activities, just in a slightly different way. And finally, we want to see Norwich Castle take its rightful place as a jewel in the crown of the UK's heritage attractions. Now, our principal contractor, Morgan Sindel, is busy making these plans become a reality, whilst our interpretation team and suppliers continue their work to design and manufacture the component parts of the new gallery and the recreated spaces. And colleagues, as we've heard, are intently delivering the accompanying activity plan. But I'm sure you're eager to find out what's happening behind those tall hoardings. One of the first things you notice in approaching the construction site is the huge tower crane, which helps to explain some of the complexities that we have to take into account when working on such a project. As I'm sure you're aware, Norwich Castle is a Grade 1 listed building and the mound is a scheduled ancient monument. So we have to be very careful with everything that we do to ensure that we minimise the impact on the historic fabric. Now, more complexities arise because of where Norwich Castle is situated. We're up high in the middle of a busy city centre where our only access is over a bridge with a 7-ton weight limit. That's fine for small vans, but not great if you've got around 700 pieces of steel to deliver and large sheets of glass. Now, that 7-ton limit isn't actually to do with the bridge, it's because of the fragile dungeons that are beneath the area immediately at the top of the bridge. As a result of all of that, all of the materials that are needed for the project and any of the waste that's generated from the building work is being moved on and off site via the tower crane. And following the drilling of 9 piles into the castle mound, each over 20 metres long, and the construction of a stable base, this tower crane was installed last autumn. If we now don our virtual PPE and head behind the hoardings, here's what's been happening. In the area to the north of the castle keep, the old cafe building has been completely removed. The area was archaeologically assessed and excavated prior to drainage works being undertaken. The concrete foundations could then be laid, which is not simple when you're essentially working on a molehill, a man-made mound. So first piles were installed. You can see those in these images here. Now, our principal contractor, Morgan Sindall, had to check that those piles and the integrity of those piles was acceptable before works could then progress. That meant static testing needed to be completed with heavy weights tower craned into position on top of the piles and any movement in the pile head then being monitored. Sonic integrity testing was also carried out. Unfortunately, having passed all of those tests, the ground beams were then formed, which span between the piles. Now, those beams are formed with steel reinforcements like a skeleton, with a timber framework into which the concrete is then poured. The area was then ready for the steel frame arrival, again by tower crane, everything by tower crane, which was a really wonderful milestone in the construction of this new 2-storey wing. As those members who joined us earlier will know, that work is now underway to fit out this new structure, with the roof being installed as we speak. And it's this area that will be handed back to us first, with 2 stories of additional toilets and additional facilities, including a changing place with a bed and a hoist, and a cafe servery overlooking the rotunda area. A key element of the early work was to open up a new doorway within the northwest corner of the keep, which you can see with the blue arrow in the bottom left-hand corner. Now, this new entrance was instrumental, or will be instrumental, in enabling access from the new toilet block through to the ground floor of the keep. It's also vitally important for construction progress. With only narrow doorways and twisting passages into this level of the keep, Morgan Sindall needed this new opening to enable them to get the piling rig into the keep, a vital piece of kit to create the foundations for the new keep lift and staircase. To create the new entranceway, the team first had to remove the facing to expose the flint core of the wall, before Morgan Sindall could then start to mine through the 3-metre thick wall, installing gold post supports as works progressed, until a new doorway was finally created. Now, in the rotunda area, you probably wouldn't spot any difference at all, as this space is reopened to visitors. But extensive drainage works was needed to connect all of the new systems. Now, as part of the project, we're looking to future-proof the drainage to ensure that the castle keep can withstand future rainfall levels, including allowing for the impact of climate change. Now, that included yet more concrete deliveries, which meant piping up the concrete from Castle Gardens area below, as you can see in this image. Even getting concrete to site is a technical undertaking. The concrete was then deposited above the new drains, and a new floorway was installed to merge seamlessly with the existing. In the entrance area, the biggest change came with when the area immediately adjacent to the keep east wall was removed, and you could once again see the impressive facade of that wall. What I find most exciting is that that wall won't be covered up again in the new layout, as this space will remain open with a high glass roof and with easy access to the museum shop, a new restaurant and an enlarged education room. And it's this area from the new entrance door to the rotunda which will be returning to us in the second half of next year. The old staircase within this part of the building was removed thanks to a Brock, a sort of demolition robot, which was perfect for working in enclosed, confined areas. And extensive excavation was carried out within the entrance area ahead of the final pile positions being confirmed. Now here you can see some of the photogrammetry work completed by Oxford Archaeology to help interpret the many discoveries in this area, which included the staircase down to the treadmill room where prisoners were sent to work. With the myriad of prison-era walls and elements of previous drainage and heating systems, this image helps in some small way, I hope, to show some of the challenges faced by the design team and our construction principal contractors, Morgan Sindall. Now, similar to issues we faced within the toilet block, yet again, archaeology blocked the original locations identified for the piles needed within this space. And we certainly couldn't pile through a brick wall, but needed to reach the soil of the mound itself. Now that meant our project structural engineers, Conisbee, had to return to the drawing board, identifying alternative locations for the piles, which are required in this area to support a cantilever beam and column arrangement to take the weight of the first floor museum offices when walls and staircases are removed. And finally, the change in the keep is perhaps even more impressive. Initially, scaffolding was erected within the castle keep to enable a wooden balcony to be carefully deconstructed and removed. Work could then begin to create the new beam pockets within the walls, which are needed to support the weight of steel beams. Now, these beams will carry the new full floor being installed at this level. Where possible, the holes which were created when architect Edward Boardman fitted the balcony will be reused, reducing the impact on the historic fabric. The scaffolding was then extended even higher, as shown on the left here, to carry out the same task in the new mezzanine floor area. And once the work was completed, Morgan Sindall could remove the scaffolding and with it that first floor too, which used to stretch across the whole of the keep. That means that the team and members who were able to join us earlier can now stand within the ground floor of the keep, near the remains of the Norman pier bases, and look all the way up to the roof. In this recent photograph on the right there, you can see the doorway through to the Bygod Arch at the height of the old balcony level. And the removal of this floor also gave the clearance needed for the piling rig too, as seen here on the left, which has only in the past few weeks completed the piling work in the southwest corner needed to support the new lift and new stairs, which will extend up to the battlements and provide access to all 5 levels of the castle keep. The rig has subsequently moved on to carry out the piling work needed within the entrance area, and having completed that, has been taken back off site. Now, it's approximately 130 years since anyone has seen the full extent of the internal castle walls, when architect Edward Boardman turned the prison into a museum and added the wooden first floor and the balcony. Ultimately, of course, it will be 900 years of history that will be peeling back as Norwich Castle Royal Palace Reborn concludes with the redeveloped Castle Keep due to reopen in 2023. In the meantime, here are just some of the ways you can follow progress on site. And finally, a thanks to all our project funders and supporters, and thank you for listening today. And obviously, if you have any questions, either myself or Robin would be happy to take them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hannah, for that. As one of the people who donned actual PPE a little bit earlier, we were invited to see the works before this committee meeting. Just to say I'm very grateful for the opportunity of that tour. This is an exceptional and ambitious, well, exceptional in all senses, and ambitious project. So it's been great to have an opportunity to look behind the hoardings at this stage. I'm sure the members who were on the tour might wish to concur with that. Thank you very much. Robin, if I hand over to you for the next part of the report.
Thanks, Chair. So, section 6.1 provides members with a brief summary of some of the activities that have been taking place at the Museum of Norwich, and the teams there have continued to be very creative, both in terms of on-site activities, but also continuing to support more hybrid or remote working as well. And a good example of that is the example of the webinars, which were offered on the themes relating to the Chrome Norwich exhibition and the second one on the history of Norwich trams. And these were basically responding to continuing demand from some audiences to continue to be able to access programmes delivered remotely. So we know that a number of people are still anxious about returning to visiting historic sites, and it therefore underlines the need for us to continue providing that sort of more hybrid offer, including online content. And you can see some of the lovely feedback that was received by the team at the Museum of Norwich. Face-to-face activities obviously has resumed, and Heritage Open Days, as always at the Museum of Norwich, were successful. So we had nearly 300 visitors over the 2 free days of entry, and as always, a busy programme during the school holidays, and in common with sites across Norfolk Museum Service, it was good to be able to offer activities for those families, particularly visiting our museums, still mindful of the need to manage things in a safe way. Museum of Norwich also supported, as it always does, a number of local events and national campaigns. So, in common with with Strangers Hall, was an active supporter of the Norwich Science Festival, and also providing creative sessions supporting our programming linked to Black History Month. As Helen has mentioned already, we've seen schools keen to get back to our sites, and that's included visits from schools to Museum of Norwich. And just also to sort of highlight under the community partnerships heading, the fact that the Museum of Norwich has always very much embedded itself within the Norwich community, has always maintained really strong connections with a number of community-based groups and organisations. That working has continued throughout the pandemic, and that little section on page 27 just gives you a sense of some of the partnership working that's taking place at the Museum of Norwich, which is very much an asset for the local community, and credit to the team there for very much continuing to be very proactive about looking at opportunities to reach out to different organisations and to offer them support, whether it's through collections or through use of the building. I'm sure Christine in her section on Kick the Dust will be talking around our bursary trainees, and we did have a Kick the Dust bursary trainee, Jazz, based down at the Museum of Norwich, and a good example of way teams across Norfolk Museum Service have embraced the Kick the Dust project, and a very sort of telling testimony, I think, from Jazz there when she left her employment and has since moved on to another role. And credit to the team at the Museum of Norwich for providing such active support to that traineeship. Likewise, Strangers Hall, section 6.2, again, the staff team there have been very creative in exploring ways to engage with visitors both face-to-face and also remotely. As Stuart mentioned, it's been super to see an increase in opening hours at the Museum of Norwich and Strangers Hall. And at Strangers Hall, as at the Museum of Norwich, also good support for the Heritage Open Day offer. And we know in past years, Heritage Open Days have seen bumper attendances at sites of all shapes and sizes across the city. And it was really good to see sort of little steps back to normality in Heritage Open Days this year. And again, listed in that section, you can see a number of the different activities that the team of staff at Strangers Hall have been involved with developing and delivering, including the Time Together project, which is all about helping to combat loneliness and social isolation. And again, as I was saying before, looking at ways in which we can maintain a hybrid offer to engage people who are still struggling or are still reluctant to make physical visits. And finally, to draw members' attention to the fact that, as always, as we go into January, there will be the annual deep clean at Strangers Hall, which is really important in terms of monitoring the collection, identifying any issues, and then managing them appropriately. As detailed in the report, you can see that we've had to deal with an increase in mould in some of our stores, and one of the legacies of COVID across the whole service actually has been an increase in mould and pest infestation, partly because of the weather, but also because of the lack of people in buildings. We've always had staff, including conservation staff, going into our sites throughout the pandemic to monitor collections, but clearly when you've got only small numbers of staff and very few visitors, that does create a climate in which it is possible for these infestations to take place. So we've been having to manage a number of those across the service, and thanks to our conservation team and collections management team for dealing promptly with situations as they come up. But it's also about being proactive in terms of going into those collections and parts of buildings that we know are vulnerable to mould or infestation, and that's one of the reasons why the annual deep clean at Strangers Fall is so important. At this point, Chair, I'd like to hand over to Dr. Francesca Banca, who's the Senior Curator for the Norwich Museums, who's going to just sort of pick out some highlights from Section 7, which is the Norwich Curator update. Thank you, Francesca.
Sorry, I haven't used this before. I hope it's okay. Yes, thank you very much, Robin. As you'll see from my contribution to the report, Norwich curators continue on their wide variety of projects, not least of which has been the extremely welcome ability to go back into their collections on a more regular basis and to undertake said pest management, collections management tasks, which obviously have only been able to happen very minimally over the past couple of years. Everyone's very grateful that they're now able to do more. Chief amongst the items on the curator's report is probably the opening near the end of October of the Textile Treasures exhibition in the Timothy Gurney Gallery in the castle. As you'll probably all know, this was one of the shows which had to be closed almost as soon as it had opened last Christmas, but has now been extremely ingeniously by Ruth reconfigured so that it can happen in the Timothy Gurney Gallery instead. And this comprises, I expect some of you have seen it already, but those who haven't, please do before it closes in February. It's a variety of fascinating textiles, mostly bed covers, but also some clothes as well, made by a huge variety of people in a huge variety of ways. And the stories it explores about people's lives and at different times and different places, some local, some not, are quite wonderful. And one of the good things was that the extra year or so meant that we were able to include a couple of things in the show that wouldn't have been possible otherwise. The Costume and Textile Association, for example, made a gift of a Corona quilt, which they had made, which is a fascinating document of some of the things which have been have assumed, should we say, new importance during the pandemic. Otherwise, other developments, Dr. Rosie Gray, our modern and contemporary art curator, has been extremely busy working on several for forthcoming exhibitions. Probably chief amongst these is the Slaves of Fashion exhibition, which is due to begin next autumn. And this involves work by the renowned contemporary artists, the Singh Twins, which is going to be combined with works from our collection, and also, very excitingly, a new commission as well. They will be exploring some of the deep-rooted colonial and imperialist origins of the fashion industry in the past, and also textiles. So they'll be analysing some of our costume and textile collections and social history collections from a new angle. Otherwise, on a completely different note, Kate Thaxton, our Curator of Regimental Collections, has achieved the monumental task of entirely renewing her store. There was a photograph in with your report. It doesn't sound like much on paper perhaps, but it has entailed an entire refit and a complete upgrade of her packing, documentation and photography, and it's completely transformed the space. And Kate's to be particularly commended, I think, because she's had to put that off for such a long time because of the pandemic, and I know she's now been beavering away, and it's finished and it's transformed the whole place. It's fantastic. For the historic fine art front, at our last meeting, the Crome exhibition, the John Crome Bicentenary show, was still open, and Georgia has deinstalled that since, and otherwise has been catching up on all the other things that she didn't have the time to do while she was working on John Crome. But she is working on a new small exhibition for the Coleman Project space for next year, based around Frederick Sand's portrait drawings. And she's also ready to install the new watercolour exhibition, the Waterways of Norfolk. That will be early next year as well. Tim Pestle, our senior curator of archaeology, has been relatively occupied as well with a little thing called the Keep. But apart from that, he's still managing to keep on top of his treasure cases that he works on, the treasure committee. He's working on the new prison displays and has been helping to install the new Boudica gallery, or the reinstalled Boudica gallery, I should say, in the castle. David Waterhouse, the natural history curator, he has been working on a new fossil display linked with the Deep History Coast project within the castle's wildlife gallery. And apart from that, he has also been much occupied with pest management. There's the mammals gallery has needed some work in that direction, so things have now been frozen. Finally, I've been busy with various different things. Chief amongst these are the assorted exhibitions and activities connected to the Walton Bridges painting by Turner. I'm working on the forthcoming exhibition at Lynn Museum, and I'm also in discussion with Christchurch Mansion in Ipswich with for their exhibition, which is happening next year. Talking of Turner, I've also, I think, yes, since I finished writing this, the Art UK curation, which I wrote on the Turner and the Artist and the Norwich School, has gone online on the Art UK website. And I've also recently taken part in the Art UK's Art Unlocked series on YouTube, discussing 6 works of art in the castle collections, and that talk's available online as well. And yes, everything else really. I think that's it.
Thank you very much, Francesca, for that. It's great to see the rich range of offerings there, and really nice to see the textile treasures has come to fruition. Thank you. Any comments or questions from members? No, in which case, Robin, I'll hand back to you.
Thanks, Chair. And I'd just like to immediately hand on to Stuart Garner, who's going to give an update on Project Refresh, Section 8 in the report.
Thank you, Robin. On the 8th of November, works commenced on what is called Project Refresh at Norwich Castle. And principally what this is for us to improve the environmental controls of the temporary exhibition galleries. The T galleries, as they're probably better known, which is the Norwich Union Gallery and the Bernard Matthews Gallery. Within the report, there's the first graphic there shows you which of the two galleries it is that we're talking about. And basically, what we're trying to address, or will address, I should say, as part of this project, is to make the gallery spaces much better controlled that will enable us to continue to take on loan collections as part of our major exhibitions programme. And that is really important. What we've found is over the last few years, the last decades in fact, is it's becoming increasingly harder for us to satisfy lenders that lend us obviously extremely high value collections as part of the exhibitions. And just to put a bit of context to that, what we actually have to do is before we can accept a loan, the lenders require us to be able to provide them with evidence that we can provide stable temperature and relative humidity control over a set period. And then once we've got the item on loan, hopefully, we then need to continually liaise with those lenders so that we can also satisfy them whilst we've got their collections on loan, that we'll continue to look after them. To date, as I said, that's been extremely difficult for a number of factors. For two factors really. One of them is very outdated air handling plant, which we're looking to address as part of this project, but also because we are, of course, retrofitting a modern art gallery space into what was a Victorian prison wing. Those who went on the tour earlier may remember that Robin made reference to the fact that from one central place you could see the three prison wings that came from a central prisoners' governor's place. Well, the Norwich Union Gallery is one of those spaces. In fact, one of the photos you see there, you can see the roof of that, what was once a prison gallery on 2 floors. What happened then was back about now 10 years ago, some works were made to the gallery, 20 years ago, back in 2000, some alterations were made to the gallery and some kit was installed. But unfortunately, as I say, since then it's become increasingly hard to control the temperature. That's mainly due to the fact that what we have within the Norwich Union and the Bernard Matthews Gallery, and that is, Norwich Union is the big gallery and the Bernard Matthews is the one on the end, is those two spaces, for members that can remember being in there, are two very different spaces. They've got very different ceiling heights. The Norwich Union Gallery is a space which is within, the walls are internal within the building, whereas the north wall of the Bernard Matthews is an external wall. And as a result of that, what we find is the two galleries behave very, very differently in terms of the way in which we try to control them. Currently, both galleries are controlled by a single air handling unit. And what that air handling unit is trying to do is trying to satisfy those two very different demands from those two microclimates at the same time, unsuccessfully, of course. And what tends to happen is we then have as much as 20% difference in humidity between the two spaces at one time. So as part of the project, looking at it from a building perspective and from a mechanical perspective, the first thing that we're going to do as part of the project is to reintroduce a separate air handling unit and chiller unit that will feed into the Bernard Matthews Gallery, which means that the current air handling unit, which used to feed both, can just look after the Norwich Union Gallery. So what that will mean is that we will have independent control of the two spaces, and that means that the machines that look after them can do one thing at one time rather than trying to satisfy two very, very different spaces. The second thing is, in terms of shoring up the building space, we're going to need to heavily insulate the gallery roof void. And again, within the report, you will see there's a photo there marked Norwich Union Gallery roof space. What you can actually see there is the inside of that roof void, looking down onto the glazing that you would see as the ceiling if you were in the gallery spaces. And you can see there that there is absolutely no insulation whatsoever. So another difficulty that we faced was that if it was -2 outside, that roof space was -2, and then again that had a very adverse effect on us being able to control the environment within the gallery space. So we're heavily going to make sure that we provide heavy insulation within those spaces. We're also going to be changing or putting new Thermacell dry lining within the gallery walls. Members are probably aware that we have on average 3 exhibitions a year at Norwich Castle generally, which means that over the last 20 years since that Thermacell was put in place, the gallery has got smaller and smaller as it's painted 3 times every year. And in fact, the contractors were amazed at just how much paint was on those walls when they came to remove the old Thermacell. You could do the maths, that means they've been painted roughly about 60 times since those Thermacell panels were put on. So that's going to be replaced with new Thermacell, which will also then improve our ability to insulate those spaces and effectively create a closed box that will allow the air handling units to do their job with much more efficiency. The project is being undertaken by Morgan Sindall, which is of course the contractor which is looking after the Key project. That made absolute sense for us because they already have a contractor compound on site. And the works are going to be taking approximately 5 months to complete. So we'll be looking at April next year for a completion date just before the opening of our new exhibition next May. That's it, thank you. Oh, and sorry, the next section is for me as well, my apologies, which is visitor numbers. I've put down there some visitor numbers for the most recent months. Norwich Castle, as you can see, has been having a very healthy visitor number level there, with 8,000 for July, 12,700 in August, 7,600 in September, and 6,900 in October, with a total of 35,403 for the period. Actually, since we opened back in May this year, the total number of years to date for Norwich Castle is 43,444, which actually, given the fact that we have a major, as we know with the Key project, a major project being undertaken, actually those we feel are very healthy visitor numbers. Strangers Hall, we had 450 in September because that's when we started to open Strangers Hall on just 1 day a week, and also for October. And as I made reference to earlier, we're now back to 2 days per week opening, and we would expect to see those numbers increasing as a result over coming months. And Museum of Norwich also, we've just increased in November back to original opening hours and days from Tuesday to Saturday, and we should see those numbers increase. As you can see, 2,800 for the period of July to October, and approximately 3,500 year to date since Museum of Norwich opened post-lockdown. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much for that part of the report. Are there any questions or comments from members? No? Okay.
Just if I can add, Chair,
Yes,
I have a brief sort of social media update, if that's acceptable. We have a social media report which we will circulate with the minutes of this meeting. But just to give members some of the headlines, so the social media report covers activity from September to November. The 3 Norwich museums in that period gained just over 1,800 new followers across the 3 key social media platforms, which is obviously Facebook, Twitter and Instagram, which is a 3% increase. And Instagram continues to be our fastest growing platform for social media activity. And we're looking to actually launch a Museum of Norwich Instagram account for 2022 to join the other Instagram accounts across the rest of the Norwich museums. And across the 3 sites we now have, across all the social media platforms, 62,441 followers. In the report you'll see, when it's circulated, some examples of recent social media activity. We've also been continuing to see really good levels of engagement with our blog, the Norwich Castle blog, and that's earned nearly 4,000 views between September and November. And there have also been a number of films posted onto YouTube, including in this period films about the Norwich Friends tapestry, and the sword fighting programme Night School, which is a key plank of our activity plan, which actually went to Latitude over the summer and engaged with a large number of people. In terms of our social media activity, as with our other programming, we've obviously continued to support relevant campaigns. That includes Black History Month, with posts generated by all of the sites. We've also, as Helen mentioned, been very active around social media connected with the Christmas projections on the west wall of Norwich Castle, and that forms part of the Norwich Bid Christmas Crown Trail. And also in November, the castle participated in the national programme Thanks to You, celebrating lottery players and organised in partnership with the National Lottery Heritage Fund. So we'll share that report after the meeting, and just to sort of reassure members that our teams across the service, and including here in Norwich, remain very active in terms of promoting the service through social media. And as we work our way through restrictions, obviously that strong digital output has been critical for us. So just to pay credit to the teams involved in delivering that very creative content. And Chair, that concludes the Norwich Museum's report.
Thank you very much, Robin, for that. Thank you for that update, and we look forward to reading the report with the minutes. I'll just check there aren't any comments or questions from members. No, in which case we'll move to the next item on the agenda, where we receive reports from the voluntary organisations supporting Norwich museums. Perhaps I could invite Amanda first from the East Anglia Arts Fund, if you have any remarks or comments.
Thank you. Just to say how delighted I am with the castle for those attendance figures in what's been an enormously difficult time. We were very pleased to, in a more modest way, join the Friends in the support of the Chrome exhibition, and we're delighted with a talk that we were able to give online that also attracted about 100 members. We were also delighted with the exhibition that we were able to support alongside it, Somewhere Unexpected. And the two together, I think, made a very, very rich offer with which the castle reopened, and we're very proud to be part of that. We're really, really pleased to be heading to Textile Treasures on Thursday, where 40 of our members are going to hear Ruth talk about some of her favourite objects. And it's a really lovely occasion for us because it's a Christmas tea and talk, which is a much loved and well established event for the East Anglia Art Fund members. And of course, it's the first one we've been able to hold in 2 years. So we're really pleased that that is possible. And I suppose really I can just conclude by saying that we're enormously impressed by the offer next year in terms of the programme. The Popover, the City exhibition, followed by the Sing Twins, are all in very different ways exhibitions to be really, enormously well anticipated, and we're thrilled to be able to be part of that and hope to be able to support that in as active way as we possibly can. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Amanda, for that, and thank you for your continued works. Could I perhaps invite Danusia now on behalf of the Norfolk Contemporary Art Society for any remarks or comments?
Thank you. Just to echo what Amanda has actually said about congratulating the castle on all the activities. I actually saw the textiles product, and it was absolutely fantastic and absolutely fascinating, and particularly in the new COVID world where Textiles have actually replicated what's been happening, or everyone's opinions on it, which was fantastic. And also just to say that the Norfolk Contemporary Art Societies have actually contributed towards the new project by the Singh Twins as well. So we're really looking forward to that manifesting itself next year. And that's it from me. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Denisia. And again, thank you for all the works that the Society does. Next, we'll move to a report from the Friends of the Norwich Museums. I'll hand over to Felicity.
Thank you, Chair. In my report, I really look back on the year to see all of the projects that we've been involved in. The major one, of course, was the John Crome exhibition, which was a very successful show, and we were very pleased to be part of that as the main sponsors. Then in October, Esther Morgan and her communications team invited volunteer stitchers of the Friends Tapestry to come to an event in the Town Close Auditorium, and that was a really successful afternoon, and it was lovely for the volunteers to all meet each other after such a long time of being separated, and it was amazing to see the panels set out, and I think over half has been completed already. So we're the Friends are the sponsors of that wonderful project. So we're all looking forward to the final completion, but I think it'll be probably in time for the reopening of the keep, which will be marvellous. And then I'd like to mention the Civic Reception. We had a tremendous tea in Blackfriars Hall, which the Friends were invited by the City Council. So thanks very much for that again. We were so appreciative of your hospitality to us. And it certainly showed a great the relationship between the City Council and the Friends is very strong, and I think that's brought out tremendously, especially in the very nice speeches that were given on that occasion. And just now we're looking forward to arranging a centenary lunch at Houghton Hall, which is going to be hosted by our patron, Lord Cholmondeley, and that's going to be in May, so that's looking forward to next year. But, so that sort of concludes my report, I think.
Thank you very much, Felicity, for that. We were delighted to be able to host the Civic Reception for you. And perhaps I could say thank you to Councillor Ward for your speech on that event. We hope you enjoy your lunch. Are there any comments or questions for any of the voluntary organisations? Councillor Graham, yes.
Thank you. It's very unusual to see so many councillors stunned into silence. I don't have a lot to add, but the word that comes to mind is wow. So thank you. It's all amazing, and I'm especially stunned by the Black History Month and the textiles, and other people will have other interests. But yeah, I'm bowled over.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Okay, we'll now move on to an update on the Kick the Dust project. So I'm handing over to Christine at this point.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of where we're at the moment, I'm just going to give you a brief introduction. First of all, just to say that I've got two colleagues who will also be presenting. We've got Rachel Daniel, the project worker, it's Norwich based, so she's going to talk you through the number of her projects and the impact that's having on young people. And also I've got Sophie, who's our current one of our trainees, so it's her first outing out, so be kind to her. She's going to tell you a little bit about what she's been doing. So in terms of Kick the Dust, just for people who might be new or not familiar with the project, it's funded by the National Lottery Heritage Fund. And that funding has been extended to November 2022. The aim of that is to reach the hardest to reach young people aged 11 to 25, and we do that in collaboration with a number of partners, the YMCA being one of our key partners for working with the older age groups, We also work with the library service and a number of other departments right through children's services, where we look at virtual school, looked after children, care leavers, young carers, etc. I'll come to that in a moment. We've been able to extend the contract with the lottery fund because of COVID. That is probably the one thing it has done us a favour with, in the sense that we weren't able to access some of the funding pots around events, and so we've been able to tease that out to allow us to extend the project right through to the end of November. The only element of the project that won't go beyond May, which was the original finish date, is our traineeship programme, and we'll be looking to put something interim in place once our current trainees finish in May. We've well exceeded our targets, as you can see from there, to the end of November, and the report was attached. We've worked with just under 3,500 individual young people and delivered in excess of 10,000 interventions. And the premise behind that is the more interventions and interactions young people can have with employers, the number is 4, then they're 5 times less likely to go on to become NEET, which is not in education, employment and training. So our young people have that as a minimum, but the majority, as you'll see, continue with projects for quite a number of weeks, months. In fact, some of them have been with us since the start in 2018. In terms of the ages, we're in line with the national projects. There are 12 Kick the Dust projects across the country. I can't share all the data today, that will come in the January report. We only had it yesterday, and I've just been looking at where that's in line with ours. We've had 52% of our young people are in the older group, the 20 to 25. Nationally, that is 45%. And the reason for that, the projects are saying, is because of COVID and restrictions and being able to engage with the younger end has been much harder. And therefore the focus has been on the older end. We do expect that to slightly shift as we come out and start doing more face-to-face work. 35% of all our activity has been with the 19 to 25-year-olds, and that's predominantly because we do work with the YMCA client group. We have exceeded those targets, but one of our next targets really is to have more and more young people taking ownership and really helping shaping the museum service. So part of our agenda is not just to engage young people in activity to develop their skills, to allow them to progress into employment for the older end, but also to have more young people helping shape the museum service. So 70% currently of all our activity has allowed young people to design and to lead events, exhibitions and activity, which is outstanding, and we're going to share some of the ways in which they've done that in a moment. And the other significant one is the around what COVID has allowed us to do in terms of training, and something that will stay with us, that we will maintain that provision as online. We'll have blended approach and face-to-face for young people's groups, but certainly training will remain online. And we've had 220 staff, and that includes staff right across the service, taking part in a range of training opportunities, which helps them better relate and work with young people, particularly young people who face complex needs and have learning difficulties. And 129 of those staff took part in training in lockdown, and we've now got our new training programme on offer, where the places are filling rapidly for the January start. And those training opportunities are directed by staff. So our front of house team, for example, have been requesting that they do something around autism. We've had a lot of our teams who are wanting to do British Sign Language online training, so they can hold that basic conversation and feel confident that they're approaching people and families in a way that is appropriate for them, and they have the confidence to do that. So that's really going to be a growth area, I feel, going forward. In terms of where we're at with the groups at the minute, the graph there shows you our largest groups that we engage with, the YMCA, as I just said, they're one of our key partners. In secondary education, FE and HE, they're our next largest group, but within those we'll also have young people, particularly in the secondary and FE, where we're working with a lot of young people who are in some form of SEND provision, special needs provision. You'll notice that the mental health line has increased. If you were to look back to before the pandemic, that was at 13% of young people that fill our feedback in, identified as having a mental health issue. That's now at 17%. So we are looking at strategies in terms of training with staff around mental health as well for next year, but also ways in which we can positively engage young people to help them feel more secure in themselves around their well-being. And that's something that we were very conscious working with Children's Services with during the pandemic in terms of supporting those particular groups. You notice in terms of our SEND provision, those in special educational needs, that's at 8%, and you can see the percentages as we go up. This doesn't necessarily capture every single young person that we work with. So I'm conscious, for example, with looked after children and care leavers, we do work with other partners who don't necessarily report in the same way, but we do work with them around the Keep the Dust activities that we use. And I know Rachel has been doing some work with looked after children in the last week, which won't appear in those figures as yet. So in terms of Kick the Dust, if you're new to this, it's a 3-stage, it's progressive programme, and it starts with what we call player, which is light touch, one-off activities, which is really to build trust, relationship, have a bit of fun. And from that, we hope that those young people have the confidence to come through and say, I want to engage on a longer term basis. And we class it as those our shaper activities, where they may well be working with people like Francesca and other curators around exhibitions that are coming up, particularly in temporary exhibition spaces, and they help to shape what that offer might look like, the way that that's communicated to audiences. And then we've got our leader opportunities, which is working at governance level on our project steering group, the youth board, which is just being established at the moment, and also acting as mentors through our digital buddy programme. And it was interesting what Robin was saying around the social media statistics, that we had 6 of our young people over a 12-month period worked alongside 6 of our Norwich-based curators, looking at the communications with different audiences and use of different platforms. And that was a really successful programme and something that I hope we can continue with going forward. So you can see since we started in October 2018, as we've moved through to 2021, those triangles, the shapes are changing because we want to be more at the shaper leader level than we do at the player level. But that's not to say that the player activities don't have a place. Something we realised quite early on with our young people who are in the YMCA, who really are furthest away from engaging with museums and heritage, which is what Kick the Dust is about. We have an embedded post within the YMCA, which is funded through Kick the Dust. And we've been that post allows them to put what we call a pre-player programme together. So it's working in their sites where they feel comfortable using the input from the project workers like Rachel to then really sort of help shape what that offer looks like, so they have the confidence then to come into a museum. So in terms of some of the activities then, we're going to look at some of the projects. I'm just going to take you on a very quick whistle-stop tour of the West and the East, and then Rachel's going to focus in on 4 key projects that have been happening in Norwich. And lockdown really has forced us to change our approach. So at the start of lockdown, we were really conscious that we needed to maintain provision for our existing groups and really provide quality experience for the young people, and to look at how we might extend that reach, particularly for more vulnerable groups who were struggling in lockdown. So we've got a number of projects that we've run. So in terms of you may well have seen this at the forum, during Disability History Month, which is the Nothing About Us Without Us project. We had a young lady who was part of the Teenage History Club called Bethan, who really wanted to explore and be a bit more autonomous and use her personal experience of living with autism and her passion for museum activism to really think about what does it mean about being a disability in Norfolk, what are disability rights, raising awareness, but really capturing the objects and the stories of Norfolk people living with disability. And as a service, we've been able to benefit from the input that she's had into modes around that. And as a result of that, she gained the confidence and she's managed to secure a place at Anglia Ruskin University on an illustration course. So that's testament to the hard work that she put in terms of what she's got out, but certainly in terms of what we've got out of the project as well. Then we had another young man in the East who put on an exhibition. It was there from August through to the 6th of September at Time and Tide Museum. And this was done by Adam, again one of our young people who was in another group, wanted to do something of his own. He identifies as gay, and he wanted to celebrate and pay tribute to the strong men and women who identified as gay, lesbian or queer, who worked in the fishing industry at the time, but had to hide their sexuality because of the time that they were working in that. And so he applied for delegated budget, and that means through Kick the Dust, the young people can come up with their projects like Bethan and apply for £500 of delegated budget as well as additional staffing budget to support them in getting their project to fruition. And he designed 3 costumes. So he took typical workwear, which you can see in the image there. So he took gender-specific clothing, and he really sort of shook it up and gave it a very glamorous touch for the exhibition. One of those was so good, it's been approved by the Acquisitions Committee, so that will be going to NMS Collections, and the other 2 will go on permanent display at some point in the future at Time and Tide. And for that particular young man to have a professional photo shoot as well, and to get people together who he trusted and could work with, and to come up with such a professional exhibition is testament to what Kick the Dust can allow young people to really explore and express their views, but also as a museum service, what we get back from that as well. Something else that we had to do was really think about our approach to work experience. Our work experience was just starting to take off, particularly in the West, just before lockdown, where young people were coming onto site. And really it forced us to say, well, if you can't come on site, how can you offer a work experience opportunity? And we had one of our young people, Emily, who said, I really need this. I need work experience. And she was doing a university course and wanted to be able to expand her horizons and to gain accreditation for that. But she missed that that interaction. And so really what we did was looked at an alternative approach and came up with a Museum Arts Award programme and also a mentoring programme for this older group. And you may well have caught for Remembrance Sunday the Ploughing the Fields with Poetry that was live on YouTube and on Gresson Hall's site in the lead up to Remembrance Sunday, where she took poems that were written by the Land Girls and archive images, as well as going on site to do some filming herself, to really explore that as a topic. And it really did receive accolades. It appeared she was on the radio, there were press releases. It really took off because it really resonated with a lot of people. And then the one at the bottom, you may well have seen the tapestry for the Black Abolitionist Community Textile project, which was based on Moses Roper. And the young lady that was involved in that, so basically I can say I would not have got the job that she's currently got as a project coordinator at First Start in Nottingham if it wasn't for working with Kick the Dust. And that's something that comes across in all the feedback that we get from young people. So I'm going to hand over to Rachel now. So do you want me to do the clicking or do you want the clicker? No, come get the clicker. Just to say that 2 of Rachel's projects are funded direct through Kick the Dust, and another 2 are through additional funding that were received a year ago through the Department for Culture, Media and Sport, DCMS, which allowed us to extend some of the projects that Rachel's going to now talk about.
I just asked if I could give another whistle-stop tour of some of the projects that we're running at the moment, and in particularly the ones where young people are really spearheading the activities, and where lots of different staff are getting involved and integrating young people into their work. So this is the first one I'm going to talk about. This is called Castle Curators, and it's a partnership with the Royal Palace Reborn project. And as Hannah mentioned, as part of this redevelopment, there's going to be a British Museum gallery showing off lots of amazing medieval objects. And it was really important to that KEEP team to integrate different voices within that gallery. So we've handed over one of the display cases to a group of young people to take charge of and do everything for, really. They are researching stuff, they are selecting objects, they're writing object labels, they're creating a design, a display, and developing supporting resources for it as well. And we thought this would be a lovely opportunity for young people to experience everything that goes into developing an exhibition. It would be a kind of microcosm of exhibition design, and that when the keep opens, young people who are visiting will be able to see themselves represented in the gallery and see their kind of thoughts and ideas valued. So this project started in October last year when our museums were closed, so it was run via weekly Zoom meetings, which had the unexpected bonus of meaning we could work with young people scattered throughout the county, so in Durham and South Norfolk, and young people who would never have been able to get to the city centre after school and take part in a project like this. And in that first 7 weeks, the nicest bit of feedback we had was that this had been a real positive social interaction for those young people. And it kind of really opened our eyes to how we can use our museum objects and our staff to create this kind of lovely feeling of community and taking part in a really exciting project kind of outside of our castle walls. So this project from the beginning has involved lots of different members of staff. It was brought to us by Andrew Ferrara, who's one of the curators in the Royal Palace Reborn project, who was really keen to involve young people in the decision making for the new gallery and also understood the importance of working with those young people over a period of time to develop their knowledge and their confidence so that they can make these decisions from a really informed place. They also spent about 6 weeks working with the display team, again online, to first of all understand what goes into designing a display, all the different skills involved, and then they worked with them to develop their own display case designs. They did lots of sketching and developing graphics, some live editing of the display case. And then finally over summer, when we could actually have them on site, they were the first young people to get that hard hat tour of the development, which it sounds like some of you went on this morning. And they could see the space where their display case would go. And that was a really positive experience. And it also meant they could see the objects that they'd been selecting and working with for the first time. And working online is brilliant in lots of ways, but one of the things that doesn't really translate is they sort of didn't realise how tiny the objects were because they were just looking at pictures of them. So there are tiny seals, tiny dices, little tiny belt buckles. But it's led quite nicely to the next stage of their project. Because the pieces were so tiny, there was space in their case for more objects. So they've developed a partnership with the British Museum where they are going to borrow some of their star medieval objects on short-term loan to kind of fill out their display case. So they've been working on that at the moment. We're hoping to bring them on a visit after Christmas to meet some of the staff there to see the objects. And then they're going to decide how they want to display and interpret these new pieces. So this is just a really nice example of a project that has grown in scope, young people who've grown in confidence, and just the benefit that there is to the museum in general of having this group of really informed and enthusiastic young people working with us. And this is the next project, which is also a partnership with Royal Palace Reborn. This time it was a group of young people who were tasked with exploring some of the objects with a link to faith in the collections and developing an event for Interfaith Week, which was a few weeks ago in November, which shared those objects, shared those stories and really used them as a catalyst for people to kind of discuss their own beliefs, their own faith. The group again started meeting online in May, and this time they spent the first couple of weeks working with another curator from Royal Palace Reborn, this time Agata Gomolka. She spent a few weeks talking to them about Christian and Jewish communities in medieval Norwich, but also how we work with different museum objects, how we piece together meaning, how we consider different perspectives. And they really kind of latched onto this idea that it was a real catalyst for discussion, and that kind of thread carried on throughout this project. Throughout the research phase, they worked with many other staff members across the museum service. They had a little section with Francesca exploring the art of faith, and with Hannah Henderson at the Museum of Norwich, learning about more recent Norwich history. And they uncovered all sorts of things, things that we haven't heard of before, like Arthur Samuel, who was the first Jewish mayor of Norwich, whose name I spotted on my way in. And so when it came to using this research for something, the group decided they'd been really affected by living and working over lockdown. So they decided to put together an Interfaith trail walking tour of the city, which was free and accessible to everybody, which brought these stories that they'd uncovered out into the wider community. So they launched a kind of we had a soft launch of the trail for Interfaith Week a few weeks ago, where they invited members of Norwich Interfaith Link to test out their trail, and also a museum club, who are our younger Saturday club. We had a walk around the city. They gave us some lovely feedback on the trail they'd put together, which actually, there we go, there's the trail, and there's Museum Club giving it a trial run. And then we're going to make some tweaks and hopefully have a proper print run, and the trail will be accessible from the Museum of Norwich. And this again is just a really nice example of a project that has gone in a direction we would have never decided ourselves. The young people were able to work with different communities. They did lovely intergenerational work with our younger members of Kick the Dust. Just generally, I think got some really important transferable skills from taking part in this project. And just because I've mentioned them really quickly, I thought I'd just tell you a bit more about Museum Club and Art Lab, who are our young people that we work with. So these are our two Saturday morning clubs, which we've been able to run back at the museum since October, so just for a few weeks. They're for young people aged 11, 12, 13, 14, and they're open to everybody, but we reserve a certain number of spaces within each club for children who are looked after or who are referred to us through children's services. And the goal of these clubs for young people is to give them a sense of ownership over our museums from a young age, and to develop their social skills and confidence, and just that general excitement in taking part in kind of heritage and art projects. So unlike the other two projects I mentioned, there's no set agenda for these clubs. We've focused the last couple of weeks on just settling them into their new spaces and letting them kind of decide what they want to do themselves. So they've both decided what they want to do after Christmas. Museum Club really enjoyed test driving the Interfaith Trail, have decided they could probably do something just as good, and are going to develop their own games trail of the Museum of Norwich. Art Lab have been working on activities inspired by the Textile Treasures exhibition, and are going to be taking part in a takeover day after Christmas, where they share some of those art textile skills that they've learned over the last few weeks with visitors. So we've had some lovely feedback so far from these clubs being back in person at our museum. In particular, some parents and carers have fed back that some young people who struggle in a kind of formal school environment thrive in a club like this, where it's more informal, where it's more of a social club, where it's very hands-on and led by the young people themselves. So these are kind of early days, but we're really happy to have them back. And finally, I thought I'd just mention our partnership with the Youth Offending Team, because it's one of my favourite projects that we run. It's, as Christine said, one of our key target groups is working with young people who face barriers to participation in cultural activity, or who feel like museums aren't really a space they might be welcome in. And so we work directly with some of these people through our partnership with Yacht. We have been running the Young Offenders programme for quite some years before Kick the Dust, but under the Kick the Dust project, it's now a year-round activity, which is really important because some of the young people supported by Yacht are only there for a few months and would miss out on taking part otherwise. it also means that the young people who enjoy the project can keep on coming back. We never turn anyone away. So the programme runs for 7 weeks, several times a year, and it changes quite a lot, but the general premise is the same. We have a cohort of young people over 2 sessions on consecutive Thursdays, and they have a tour of the museum after hours, just them, the whole museum to themselves. And my colleague Susie Childerhouse has developed a really lovely tour where she signposts people to objects that ordinary people have left a mark on in some way, whether it's like a thumbprint on a tile or a little maker's mark on a ring. And we discuss the marks that they might leave behind. We use it as a bit of a catalyst to have these wider conversations, or their yacht workers do. And then the young people make something out of clay or printmaking, which is inspired by what they've seen at the museum. And again, having that kind of very supportive, very creative environment allows the young people and the yacht workers to have quite difficult conversations, because it's just a lot easier to talk that way when you're concentrating on some clay or something you're making, when you don't have to make eye contact or feel under the spotlight. And in our second week, we're generally led by what the young people have been interested in. So if they liked the animals, we take them to see David Waterhouse, who's our natural history curator, to show them the skin room and the collections, and take out some special things for them to look at. Recently, we've been taking them to the Museum of Norwich for their second week, which we've been having a really great response to, actually. The young people have liked seeing things that they recognise. 2 young people we've had this term are in construction, and they have really enjoyed seeing kind of tools and different things they use every day in a museum, which surprised them, but also allowed them to tell us what everything was. And I think that was really lovely to see them see something they use and know about, valued enough to be put in a museum. So yeah, the yacht project keeps on running all throughout the year, and we end with a celebration where we show off the young people's work, have invited guests, have some delicious snacks, give the young people a certificate to use for CVs or job applications, and just really celebrate their achievements. So that's a very quick whistle-stop tour of some of the projects running at the moment in Norwich. And hopefully they give you a good idea of just the variety of different things going on, and just the way that young people are especially kind of developing activities themselves. I'm happy to answer any questions anyone might have at the end. I think now I'm passing over to Sophie, who's one of our wonderful Kick the Dust trainees, who's going to tell you a little bit about her journey into Kick the Dust.
Hi, so I'm Sophie, as Christina's already sort of introduced me. So I'm just going to start off by telling you a little bit about myself. So I've got a degree in fine art, which I studied at the Norwich University of the Arts, and so it was for this love of art, and I was also on the curation team at university, and so I was very interested in curation, and then I found the Young Art Advocates, and so I joined that. And so it was really engaging to use the John Crame's collections as part of his bicentenary celebration. And it was just from this, it was something I realised I wanted to pursue further. And luckily, there was a Kick the Dust traineeship that I applied to, and thankfully managed to secure a place. And so that's a little short introduction to me. Some of the things that I've been up to in the traineeship so far. So I've been given the task of working on a wall display for the office of part of the D&T team, and just working on a better design, and also just making the walls better use of the walls, and also to communicate better between the team members. because at the moment they're not really being used and they could really benefit from my designs. And also I'm working on a love letter tree and designing that based around the art of courtly love. Event that's going to be taking place in the Museum of Norwich in February. So that's like really great, as I'm allowed to use my design skills and talk to the team members, get more of a sense of what we're capable of doing, as well as the whole budgeting idea, which I'm still wrapping my head around. So that's really good. I'm really looking forward to continuing to design that. And I've also recently been doing quite a lot of practical skills. And so I've learned how to use an air compressor and an air stapler by covering boards with fabric, which ultimately would be used for like objects to be displayed on in cases. And so I've really enjoyed that. And I've also learned how to make labels. And recently, just yesterday, I also did like a redesign of the interactives in the Textile Treasures exhibition. So I like painted the hexagon and just did a whole entire paint job to make it look better. And I'm also, so that's sort of some of the activities I've been doing at the moment. And some of the things I'm really excited to come is working on more exhibitions in the future. I think I'm going to be working on the World We Live In exhibition. So I'm really looking for what's to come with that. And similarly, just learning a lot of new knowledge and skills and meeting new people. I'm very interested in curation, learning engagement, conservation, as well as just the design team and every like sort of technical skills that I can learn, and anything that gets thrown my way. And I'm also really looking forward to working with Rachel and Art Lab on Saturdays and Museum Club some more. So yeah, thank you everyone.
Okay, so we've almost come to the end of this. Just to say, and Robin alluded to this in his earlier report, we had 3 trainees who were on the programme last year. They started just before lockdown, so their placement was actually 18 months in the end, because we felt as we were opening up that it would have been unfair to have stopped their traineeship because they wouldn't have got on site otherwise. All completed their level 3 diploma in cultural heritage, and all 3 are now employed, so they're using their skills in very different ways. One who was doing Sophie's traineeship in the D&T team has taken that into a family-run business where they're doing hand-painting signs. So that's quite an interesting development for her as well. So we've got 4 trainees, 3 others as well as Sophie, spread across the county, and they'll be with us until the end of May, as I mentioned at the beginning. And they're also, because it's a bursary traineeship, they're also linked to a qualification. It would have been impossible to have done the level 3 diploma this time round in the 7 months ultimately that they've got. So they're doing a Gold Arts Award, which will be linked to a specialist field of their choice, which will again feed back into Norfolk Museum Service as a whole, which we will benefit from. Just pick one more. No, 2 more. So this, as you hopefully you've seen, this is an approach that works, not just for young people in terms of building their confidence and their skills and learning about heritage-based skills, but also around staff as well in terms of their professional engagement and being able to support young people into progression, which feeds into our institutional change. And our young people are really, have sort of pushed, they found their voice and really started to push us and inspired us with their sort of passion and determination, as you heard from Rachel. They will help us to get where we are, where we want to be, but there's still a way to go. So on the last slide, then this is where we're up to now in terms of we can create legacy, which is maintaining that momentum, identifying our successor funding. So we're already starting to look at what else is coming through the National Lottery Heritage Fund Open Programme. We're also working with Children's Services, the potential around commissioning for some of the key work linked to skills and progression from our most vulnerable young people. And we're also moving forward on our institutional change agenda, again through our Children's Services group that we've established called Making Creative Futures. And that's about everybody coming together with the same agenda of improving the life chances of our most vulnerable young people, and looking at how we can collaborate and support each other with training and also resourcing through that group, and also looking at extending our training offers, I mentioned at the beginning, for staff who want to really engage with the programme for young people who are facing more complex needs and multiple barriers to engagement. So as Rachel said, we're more than happy to take questions, and if anyone is interested in any of the training opportunities that we might have and would like to be part of it, please get in touch. I'm sure we can create more space if anyone's interested. And it'd be lovely to hear from people about any opportunities you've got our young people could progress into in terms of volunteering or paid opportunities as well, please. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Christine, Rachel and Sophie, for updating us all on this really successful project. Are there any comments or questions? Councillor Ward first.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Yes, absolutely wonderful project. I've sort of kept an eye on it over the years and seen a number of the events, particularly the Teenage History Club. And I've seen how some of those youngsters, including Bethan, have progressed through the years on that project. So very well done. And I was just going to ask you, out of curiosity, when they get to 25, do you just wave them goodbye, or are you able to have any further engagement or point them in directions of other projects, please?
Thank you, Councillor Warner. Yes, they don't fall off the end, I think is what we're hoping. Although the funding is to support up to age 25, what we're doing is building that relationship, so with those partners as well, making sure that those young people are supported. And part of the Youth Accelerator funding, which is the additional funding that we have for some of the projects that Rachel's involved with, it is about looking at progression beyond the project. So, for example, our trainees who are now in employment, 2 of whom are 25, it's not just about saying, well, you've made it now, it's actually making sure that we touch base and keep in touch in terms of their progression and linking up with them. The YMCA, likewise, it's about making sure that we don't lose touch with those young people. It's not an easy one, and it does rely on that willingness to continue that engagement, but that's something that we definitely wouldn't want to stop if that young person felt they were in need of that. And certainly in the work experience programme in the West, we do accommodate young people who are over the age of 25 because that is a need that's still great, particularly if you have a particular learning need or disability where actually it would be wrong to say you're 25, you need to move into something else. It is about being realistic as to what we can achieve, but also making sure we don't allow anyone to drop through the cracks.
Thank you. Councillor Bridget Colton.
Yeah, mine's just a comment. I can remember several years ago when Robin came to me when I was then chair, telling me that you'd got the money for the Kick the Dust and going to visit Christine and seeing all the stuff that she was going to do. I never realised that it was going to be so successful as it has been, and the fantastic work that you've been doing. And listening to Rachel and all the stuff that you've been doing there, absolutely amazing. And Sophie, how the passion that's coming through from what she's doing, it's brilliant that she's got that chance to do that. But I do really want to say thank you to Hannah, because I thought that was an outstanding presentation that she did. All the great work that Francesca does, and Dr. Giorgio as well. All the stuff that has been going on today. It's been a really, really fantastic meeting, I think, and so many positive things in it.
Great, thank you very much. I completely concur with that. We've heard some great things this afternoon. If there are no other comments, I'd just perhaps like to say I'm delighted to hear about the staff training facilitating greater accessibility here. That's wonderful to hear. We really very much hope that you're able to continue with your traineeships beyond next May. So thank you very much, everybody. If there are no further comments or questions, thank you everybody for your attendance